two major problems for the Raptors this season was their half-court shot creation and their overall three-point shooting, but the NBA draft could provide a perfect opportunity to address these needs, and a shooting guard out of Baylor by the name of Keyonte George could be exactly the answer. So, is he the right fit for the Raptors in this upcoming entry draft? Let's get into it. What's going on, NBA and Raptors fans? Welcome to Amateur Hour Sports, the YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors content in videos, live streams, and shorts. If you like what you see from today's video and you want to see more content just like this, especially as we get closer to that NBA draft, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel and make sure you have that notification bell turned on as well so you never miss out on any more of the prospects that I'm going to be covering. But today's full focus is on Keyonte George, once again, a shooting guard out of the University of Baylor, a very, very talented shot-making player, but we need to go through over the course of this video if he is the right fit for the Raptors and if they should be drafting him at 13th overall. So what we're going to do in the video, we're going to go through exactly who Keyonte George is, so you know what you need to know about the player. We're going to go into his college stats, what he produced per game in his only season at Baylor. We're going to talk about his strengths, his weaknesses, and we're going to finish off the video with a player comparable, and it's a pretty interesting player comparable and could be just what the Raptors need, so stick around to the end of the video so you know exactly who it is. But who is Keyonte George? As I've mentioned, we went through the position and the school that he went to, but at only 19 years old, there is plenty of room to grow, so you love to see that with any prospect as they head towards the NBA draft. He's 6'4", so fits the combo guard type of build. He does play as a shooting guard, but has shown some tendencies to be able to fit that point guard role a little bit. There's some certain things he's going to have to tidy up to quite a significant degree to be able to play there consistently at the NBA level, but has a little bit of tendencies in that area. As far as the wingspan goes, I looked all around. I could not find a specific wingspan listed. If you found one, please let me know in the comments down below what it is. It doesn't look like anything extraordinary. Doesn't look like his build is anything extraordinary. What we're more concerned about with the player is his skills and his strengths, which we'll get into in just a second here. But let's go over as well the stats that he produced per game in the one season at Baylor. As a scorer, produce a good amount of points per game here. Above 15 points per game is a good start going through the statistical categories. For a shooting guard that typically played in a 3-guard system, you don't hate to see 2.8 assists per game. You certainly would like that to go up a little bit, but not really as invested in the assists when it comes to shooting guards. When it comes to specific shooting guards like Keyonte George, who is more of a bucket getter, somebody likes to score in isolation, which we'll talk about a little bit further in just a second here. In the rebounding category, 4.2 rebounds per game is something that you do like to see, but what you definitely don't like to see, and we talked about with the assist, only 2.8, seeing 2.9 turnovers per game, a negative assist to turnover ratio, that could definitely cause some concern. I'm not super against drafting a player who has shown some bad tendencies in the turnover category. That's something that does clean up with a little bit of age, but once again, we're going to talk further about the weaknesses later on in the video. From an efficiency standpoint, some more problems are going to come here. Wow, is this guy not very efficient at 37.6 in his field goal percentage? I will say, for the three-point percentage, I'm more than happy seeing a guy shooting 33.8% from three, especially in college. Efficiency does come with age, and obviously, the field goal percentage in general is troublesome, and his two-point percentage is only 42%. But for a player who's taking 7 threes per game, it's not the end of the world. He's more of an outside shooter, and some of the shots are a little bit more difficult that he takes on. It's not great, but I'll also explain why it's not the end of the world, and we'll talk a little bit more about that now as we get into the strengths. The biggest strength in Keyonte George's game is the scoring and the shot making. This player, as I just mentioned, takes on a lot of extremely difficult shots. And maybe it's a problem, but he makes just enough of those difficult shots that it allows him to continue to take them on, to have that confidence to continue to take them on. So there's a lot of plays where he's getting buckets out of nothing, but there's also a lot of plays where he maybe is forcing up a little bit too much of those shots. But overall, the shot making that you see from the player, the perimeter play that you see from him, he can score on multiple levels. He can score from three, he can score off the catch and shoot, can score off the dribble, score off step backs, he can score in mid-range, and does use his basketball skills and his knowledge of the game really well to get himself to the rim. He is really good at making the defenders, using their leverage against him, using their momentum against him, and using his great footwork. He's allowing himself to create all these excellent opportunities without being the most freakish athlete, without really being a freak athlete at all. He just knows how to get his shots up and makes them to a certain degree from three. It does once again need to improve from a 2-point standpoint. Where he may have more success going forward, especially from an NBA standpoint, getting to that next level, is honing in on that 3-point shot a little bit more. Certainly, 7 3-point attempts per game and hitting just about 34% of them in college. That's something that I'm pretty happy with, but can he dial up the threes a little bit more at an NBA level? Maybe focusing more of his game towards getting open for threes on the outside rather than being a shot maker and shot creator for himself. Can we add in a little bit more off-ball stuff, especially when you're not going to have the ball as much at an NBA level? I think with the 3-point tendencies that we're seeing, the smooth jump shot that he possesses, this is something that can trend very well at the NBA level. Going further down the list, going off the shooting stuff, there is certainly some playmaking flashes out of the pick and roll, does make some good passes inside, does know where players are supposed to be and can find the right pass oftentimes. Players finished at a pretty high rate out of his passes out of the pick and roll. It's not perfect. His playmaking is not perfect at all. I mean, we saw the assist to turnover ratio, but there are some flashes there that could show that this could trend upward again once we get to that NBA level. On defense, he's not the best defender, but he's a capable defender. He's a smart defender. Works pretty well when he's guarding the 1s and 2s on the opposite team. Definitely cannot guard up a size and play at the 3 at all. He has to be guarding the opposition guards if he's going to have any sort of success there. And when he's truly engaged and truly locked in, he does move his feet well in on-ball settings. The off-ball stuff could use a little bit more work, but the on-ball settings would showcase that he understands how to play that role. He understands how to be a defender. And when he is, once again, locked in and engaged, he can be successful there. And that is something, once again, that can trend upward at the NBA level here. The final thing that we have is just he's highly skilled. He's a very skilled player. He seems like somebody who obviously has worked hard, but there are certain players you see who it feels like some players have worked harder to get to that level, where some players had more of that skill naturally. And I think Keyonte George fits into that category. He's an extremely skilled basketball player that uses his skills to his utmost advantage to generate looks for himself and make him this successful player who had a good year at Baylor. But with these strengths, I've kind of alluded to a bunch of them so far. There are weaknesses we need to address, and there are some somewhat alarming weaknesses when it comes to Keyonte George's game. First and foremost, going on the weaknesses, the shot selection. I mean, I've spoken about it a bunch of times already. He hasn't met a lot of shots that he doesn't like, which can be a bit of a frustration. Sometimes he's taking on too many defenders. Sometimes he's dribbling a little bit too much. Sometimes he's taking, those step back fadeaway mid-range jumpers, which I'm not really a fan of. I think there's a place for that in certain people's game, but there's too much of it for Keyonte George. That is something that needs to clean up. We already talked about the assist to turnover ratio as well when it comes to the weaknesses. Like, that just can't happen. He often panics when he gets blitzed in a pick and roll. He often panics when he gets double teamed. Not the most sound thinker in those constricting settings that the defenses bring to him. Maybe not as big of a deal when you're at the NBA because he's not getting hounded defensively, but with these smarter defenders, it's a lot easier to telegraph where he's going. Sometimes he makes it too obvious, which leads to these turnovers. That's something that needs to clean up if he's going to be successful at the NBA level. I spoke about his skill. I spoke about how he uses the defensive leverage. I spoke about how he uses defensive momentum against the players. But the reason he does that so well and the reason that's such a big part of his game is that he doesn't have the explosiveness or the athleticism that some of the other players in this draft class possess. That first step just isn't quite there for him to generate separation. That could come. He's only 19 and he's lost a considerable amount of weight since starting at Baylor. Apparently he's lost over 20 pounds since starting at Baylor. He's right around 200 pounds. Perhaps if he gets a little bit leaner, perhaps if he loses a little bit more weight, can he generate that extra explosiveness? It would indicate that he could, but it's just not there yet. Something that NBA teams definitely need to be aware of. Going down the list even further, we have the defensive consistency. A capable defender, as I said in the strengths, but is he a willing defender? A lot of the times he got caught napping off ball, and a lot of the times on ball, there's just some rough play where he gets blown by far too easily. There's just some rough play where he's just not in the right positions to make the play, and you have to be engaged, especially if you're playing with the Raptors, so many great defenders. They can hide it a little bit, but with so many good defenders here, you have to be at that level to play with the Raptors. Maybe it differs when a new coach comes into the team, but there are certainly concerns on the defensive end. Fortunately, it's all mental stuff, and the actual fundamental skills are there, but is he ever going to start caring? That's a question you have to ask yourself if you want to call his name on draft night, especially with one of those lottery picks. On-ball decision-making, as I mentioned as well, when he gets blitzed, when he gets a lot of defenders on him, that is a particular problem, and his size. He's not the strongest guy at 6'4". He's not the tallest of players. He's like 6'4" is fine, but doesn't have a ton of strength to himself. Doesn't really get to the rim really well. He's a willing finisher through contact. It's just at the NBA level, is he going to be able to use the craftiness and use the opposition's leverage momentum against him as much? Probably not. The strength is going to have to be there a little bit more prominently once again to succeed at the NBA level. As I said, there's a lot of things here, a lot of weaknesses here. These are all things that I think that he can work on and work on with relative ease if he has the willingness to do so. He does have the willingness to do so. There is a ton of upside and a ton of bright spots to like about the strengths that you could mold this player to be extremely effective at the NBA level. And we're going to go into the player comparable here. A player who has a lengthy and successful career playing a great role for his team, has had signs and shades of being able to, excel as a third option, but I think the best player comparable that we have here is Eric Gordon. Now, the way we look at Eric Gordon these days is that he's like this spot-up shooter, three-point shooter, but Eric Gordon, if you really watch him play, especially if you go to the Houston days, maybe even prior to that with the Pelicans days, Eric Gordon is a capable ball handler, a capable shot creator. It just so happened, probably a lot of people watching this, the bulk of where you saw Eric Gordon was playing next to, James Harden, Chris Paul, two extraordinarily ball-dominant players, but Eric Gordon can get his man. Eric Gordon can create his own shot in mid-range, create his own shot from three. He was never the most efficient player from two, but a solid player to have in your team as this sort of third offensive option. Good shooter from the outside, good shooter from mid-range. Doesn't get to the rim extraordinarily well, but despite not having the best of athleticism, the best of the explosiveness, having limitations in those categories, he was a smart player who knew how to use his skills and knew how to use the opposition weaknesses against him to gain some advantages and get his points. I saw some other likening to players like Bradley Beal. Kind of like that one, but not as sold on that one as I am to the Eric Gordon comparison, and a little bit to Cam Thomas in the way that Cam Thomas creates offense. Like Cam Thomas, there's some games where he'll have like 40 points and some games where he'll have like 6 points. So there's a certain element of streakiness to his game that I like it a little bit to Cam Thomas. So it's like, I'd say 80% Eric Gordon, about 20% of Cam Thomas. I think that's the best player comparable that we have for Keyonte George here. So is this the right fit for the Toronto Raptors? Is this somebody that they should be considering on draft night? Well, I went into the deep dive on George expecting to really love the prospect, thinking that, this could be the secret weapon coming off the bench, the microwave scorer, the streaky scorer, the guy who can break down a half-court defense to get his own buckets. Like, this is the type of player the Raps are missing. This is the missing piece. We haven't had a player quite like this. Gary Trent does it to a certain degree. Can we lose Gary Trent and now have his replacement come in here in Keyonte George, fill that void with a cheaper contract and a younger player who can mold a little bit better defensively to what the Raptors have needs-wise going forward? I wanted to believe all these things on Keyonte George, but the more I learned, the more I disliked. I still think he's a good player. I still think he's a good draft pick. I'm not quite as high as I was originally. And also, the more I look into it, the more I think this is just not the type of player Masai Ujiri is going to take. An inefficient player who doesn't show enough willingness defensively. This just doesn't seem like somebody Masai Ujiri would really want to bring into the team. There are some other great candidates out there. We spoke about Cason Wallace in the previous videos. Check out. I'm completely sold on Cason Wallace. If he's not there at 13 and Keyonte George is, I think there's going to be some other prospects we cover on this channel as we get closer to NBA draft time that will say, hey, if these guys are available with Keyonte George, you probably pass on Keyonte George and go with somebody else. I still think it'd be a good pick. I'd be so excited if the Raptors did take him, but I think there's going to be some better candidates out there for the Raptors to consider. Keyonte George should definitely be kept under consideration, but not quite the perfect fit or the best fit, I believe, that the Raptors should be looking for with the 13th overall pick. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you check out my other draft profile on Case and Walls, and for future draft profiles on this channel as we get towards the June 23rd NBA draft day, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Help me on my road to 15,000 subs. Hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss out on any of those draft profiles. Drop a like if you did enjoy, and I'll see you again next time for another video.